Let me know we're good. Hey, welcome friends. This is the Sunday Sanity Check with Oliver Ox. My name is Oliver Ox. Let's start digging through the insanity. This has been a couple of weeks, actually, since we've last been on, and it's been a couple of crazy weeks. So much stuff going on. So we're going to get into some updates on what's going on with Gaza, some updates on freedom of speech, which is definitely a related topic these days. We're going to talk economy because there was a lot of economic stuff going on this week with tariffs and all that. I've tried to do my best to get a good understanding of the tariff situation and pass it on to you and give you my take on that. So that's what we're going to do today. As always, please feel free to get in the comments. Let me know what I'm missing. Let me know what I fail to understand. All right, we're going to start with possibly maybe the biggest news out of Gaza over the last week or so. There's been I'll give you the video and we'll go from there. How about that? Good, does. So this is a video shot by one of the paramedics. Originally, the Israelis, when this story came out about 14 dead paramedics, had said that they weren't properly marked, that they didn't have their lights on, etc., etc. This is them shooting. That's as much of that as I care to watch, and then some. So this is a story that came out a little while ago about these dead paramedics. And Israel, as they always do, claim that, they thought they were terrorists this, terrorists that, Hamas. And when it came down to it, it turns out that pretty much every part of Israel's story about what happened completely fell apart. These people were found along with their ambulances in a shallow grave that was dug for them. Now Israel says they're going to investigate themselves to find out if there was any wrongdoing after they've already lied about their wrongdoing. More just horrendous war crimes that you and I, the American taxpayer, are funding. Another article that came out of Haaretz. Haaretz is one of the big newspapers in Israel. And what's interesting about that is how much more critical they're allowed to be of the Israeli regime than we are. So there's this little take here, that about human shields. So often the excuse that the IDF give for why they're killing so many civilians is, well, Hamas is using them as human shields. That's what's going on here. Well, it turns out that using human shields, that is putting civilians in harm's way to deter attacks, is part of their policy. And if you give me this back, we have right here, this is a little video of it. This is a Palestinian man used as a shield as they're going in. They say it's common for them to use them when they're searching new places. And they're using human beings, generally civilians, as human shields. There you go, taped or stuck right to the front of a military machine, etc., etc. Again, horrific war crimes done with our tax dollars. America needs to be better than this. Every American I know is better than this. Every single one. None of the people I know would do this. And guess what? Most Israelis, and certainly most of the people who are given fault for this, are better than this as well. I have, since the very beginning of this, and I think it's a tweet that's pinned to the top of my X profile. The idea that it is anti-Semitic, that you're being racist to Jewish people or biased against Jewish people for criticizing the Israeli government, is the most racist anti-Semitic shit you could come up with. You're saying everybody of a certain religion and ethnic group is responsible for the actions of a government that they have no control over whatsoever? That's fucking ridiculous. It's a ridiculous thing to say. It's like saying, well, America's run by Christians, so if you criticize Trump, then you hate Christianity. It's fucking ridiculous. If you criticize the Iranian government, it's because you hate Muslims. It's a stupid idea on its face, and it shows you how indefensible the positions of the military-industrial complex are. Because let's be honest, that's who these people represent. They represent the military-industrial complex. They represent European colonizers. And that's exactly what's going on here. There's no logical liberty-based argument that you can make to support this. There's no pro-democracy argument that you can make to support this unless you lie to yourself. And great example of this, Des, if you can my screen. Jewish protesters flood Trump Tower to demand activist Mahmoud Khalil's release. There is a huge movement among Jewish people, including Hasidic Jews, including Orthodox Jews, including rabbis, including Jewish people in Israel, to stand up and speak out against this, because it is not a representation of a religion. It's not a representation of an ethnic group. It's a war crime. It's many, 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 many war crimes done for the richest people in the world, like all war crimes tend to be done for. And this is just not the case. This is not a racial issue. This is not an ethnic issue. It's a violence issue. And I applaud and stand with all of the Jewish people who say, stop doing this in my name. Stop making this about my religion. It's ridiculous. We had a visit from Prime Minister Netanyahu, a man who's wanted by the International Criminal Court, a man who's got a war crimes list longer than your arm. And here's the reception that he gets when he comes to America. Remember the reception that Ukrainian president got when he came to America. And I'm no fan of the Ukrainian war, and I'm no fan of the Ukrainian president. So I thought that was fairly reasonable treatment for him, although clearly grandstanding by the current administration. This is ridiculous. And again, I don't know how any Americans can feel proud of this moment. I honestly wonder where your pride is. Sorry, there we go.
The amount of look at this. The amount of respect that they show Bibi Netanyahu. He's got them all lined up. Rubio was there. Pete was there. Everybody.
All these supposed America First people.
For this guy. What does that tell you? Look at this. Don't worry, sir. Here, let me get that for you. Go ahead, sit down. The largest recipient of taxpayer money right here. And he walks in as if he owns the place.
So this guy goes on, and there's 1,000 examples of things like this. But again, this seems like a really backwards relationship. And when Zelensky was here, Trump and Vance were very happy to call it out. We're the ones sending you money. You give us respect. Okay. Where's that same energy here? Why does Bibi not get the same treatment as Zelensky got? I mean, quite frankly, if we're sending our money that comes out of my pocket to pay taxes. I just got an extra $5,000 tax bill from the IRS this week. I'm a little salty. If we're sending them our money, why are we pulling out shares and changing our laws and arresting Americans for free speech in service of another country? It seems like they should be doing those sort of things for us, not the other way around. But unfortunately, our president, who sold himself, and we're going to get into this a little bit more, but I remember the campaign. I remember the rallies, and I remember what he was saying in those places. I didn't go to any of the rallies. I don't go to fucking political rallies. But I remember watching them and seeing what he was saying, and the message that resonates was an anti-war message. Not surprisingly, it was the exact same message that resonated in 2008 when Barack Obama ran for president on an anti-war stance. Guess what? The American people, 90% of us, do not want you taking our money and sending it overseas to kill kids in other countries. We don't want that. We don't think that's a good use of our money. Even if you think it's an okay thing to do it, we don't want to pay for it. So it's wild to me seeing the flip-flop of the Trump administration. But it's not wild because every administration does it. Obama did the exact same thing. What baffles me, and it was the same during the Obama administration, is how his supporters stay right by his side. Obama said he was going to, close Guantanamo Bay. He was going to give us a public medical option. He was going to pull out of Iraq and Afghanistan, etc. And he did none of those things. And Obama's supporters like, oh my God, he's the greatest ever, Obama. And guess what? Trumpsters are doing the exact same thing. Trump said pretty much the same stuff. He's going to pull us out of the wars. He's going to get that tax money back into our pockets. We're not going to get involved in every little thing. He's going to cut the military budget. And again, what do we get? The exact opposite. Whether you whether you elect a super progressive blue Democrat like Obama or a America First red hat like Trump, guess what you get? You get a fucking neocon. You get George W. Bush, no matter which way you vote. Here's some more lovely things from our fearless leader who's supposed to end all these wars.
Out war crimes was not on the docket for me today. I'm not gonna lie to you. The fact that he said these Houthis gathered for instructions on attack. Oops, there will be no attack by these Houthis. People, these are just regular people gathered for a tribal gathering, and we bombed the fuck out of them. You understand that? Innocent people that's standing in a circle. Use your brain one time logically and think, people are going to meet to go over attacks in a circle like that with no weapons around, no trucks, no nothing. Why? Strictly for vibes? Knowing that the Americans are watching them, there's drones following them all over the place. This is where they would meet at. That doesn't sound very smart or logical to me. Or at least this image. This is what we bombed. You understand that, people? Us, the U.S. That is what we just funded. All these people, dead.
See, that's your tax dollars. That's your tax dollars killing a group of probably not very wealthy people standing around in an oval in the sand. And then again, your president bragging about it. And why? Because the Houthis are bad. Why are the Houthis bad? Because they're trying to block traffic through the Red Sea. Why are they trying to do that? Oh, because they care about the Palestinian people who are being starved and blockaded, and the Israelis broke the ceasefire agreement. So, again, the Houthis in this situation, not even the fucking bad guy if you really dig down deep enough. And again, we're just bragging about it. And the Trumpsters, right on cue, well, Muslims and blah, 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 Islam, and the exact same script I heard in 2003, 2004, 2005, trying to justify the atrocities of George W. Bush. The exact same things. The exact same things. So once in a while you come across somebody saying exactly what you wanted to say, even better than you could. So I got a little clip here from the Jimmy Dore show. Jimmy Dore is a former progressive, now sort of in no man's land. He's a pro universal health care, generally anti-war. That used to be on the left since in the new times when everything seems to be on its head. Jimmy Dore has been accused of being on the right, and I think he's far from it. But I have a great clip here that I would like to share with you.
$1 million.
Great things happening with our military. We also essentially approved a budget, which is in the facility, you'll like to hear this, of $1 trillion, $1 trillion, and nobody's seen anything like it. We have to build our military, and we're very cost conscious, but the military is something that we have to build, and we have to be strong because you got a lot of bad forces out there now. So we're going to be approving a budget, and I'm proud to say, actually, the biggest one we've ever done for the military.
We're very cost conscious, but we're going to push through $1 trillion for a Pentagon that can't even pass an audit.
So this is directly, again, no one voted for this. People voted for the exact opposite. Trump ran it as an anti-interventionist. Trump, in fact, a few moments after he was sworn into office, he was floating the idea of cutting the military budget by 50% in conjunction.
We got that clip, Jimmy. Let's listen to him say it. Just exactly as you said. Right after he took office, this is what Trump said.
First meetings I want to have is with President Xi of China, President Putin of Russia, and I want to say, let's cut our military budget in half. And we can do that. And I think we'll be able to do it.
So, again, that is what he ran on. Americans are sick of seeing our young people coming back from wars injured. We're sick of the fact that 30,000 military personnel have committed suicide since we started the war on terror horseshit. In addition to the 8,000 who've died in combat. I mean, and I don't even know the number of wounded. It's through the roof. Few assets more important than your brave young men and women. And then $7-8 trillion, depending on how you do the math, that we've wasted on all these wars. And Trump ran against that. He ran against it, and he was right to run against it. And what do we get? oh no, instead of cutting the military budget from, it was 800 billion when he said that, 700 billion, he wanted to cut it in half. So like a $400 billion military budget was what he said he was going to do. And instead we get $1 trillion. $1 trillion, right? That's a million millions. That's spending $1 million 1,000,000 times. You could give $1 million to 1,000,000 different people, and that's $1 trillion. And that's how much they're going to spend on our military. The same institution that fails every single audit. September 10th, 2001, Donald Rumsfeld came out and said they were missing $2 trillion from the military budget. All of a sudden, on September 11th, all those buildings got blown up. Funny how that happens. Des, you have something to add?
Yeah. In that clip of him saying $1 trillion, he sounded like fucking Dr. Evil. It was some bad shit.
Yeah, it does. Right, and it's why I really need to point out this is not a Republican problem. This is not a MAGA problem. This is exactly what Biden was doing the whole time. It's what Obama did before him, and it's what Bush did before him. This is our empire. This is the American empire. The problem is it's really not the American empire because it doesn't help normal Americans. We do not benefit from this situation. Certainly not when we're working 2 and 3 jobs to feed our kids and can't afford to buy houses, et cetera, et cetera. This is not an American thing. It's a corporate elite thing. It's a bankers thing. These are bankers' wars. They're the people who benefit from this. Not the 1%, as we talked about back in Occupy Wall Street in 2008. This is the 0.0001%. A tiny fraction of psychopaths who seem to run everything. And we can do better. As Americans, we need to know we can do better. I had there's going to be an interview that I'll be coming out with. It's going to be a while, actually, because I'm going to do a follow-up and do some more research with an immigrant talking about who's been here for many years, talking about coming to America. And the thing that she said over and over again, and the thing that I hear from everybody, is freedom. The reason people want to come here, it's not because they're trying to get our jobs or any. They want freedom because they're in countries where they don't feel free, where they're not free. Often you can trace that back to U.S. foreign intervention as to why they're not free, because we're propping up some dictatorship somewhere. But freedom is what is the value that everybody values. Everybody wants to be free. We're less concerned about other people's freedom often, but we always want our own. And as Americans, it's something we should be proud of. It's something we should hold incredibly close to our hearts and fight and die for. And that might be in our lifetime. I think there's a very good chance that we are either going to fight and die for freedom, or we'll be the last generation to ever see anything resembling freedom. So another little connection to some domestic issues and international issues. This is James Lee. I follow him. He's probably my favorite TikTok creator, actually. One of these days, we're going to get him on the show. We got to get the numbers up so he'll want to come on the show with us. But check this out. He makes a great point about protests. And for those of us who were involved in Black Lives Matter protests, for anyone involved in the current Elon Musk protests that aren't getting broken up by police, that are being allowed to happen, even encouraged to happen, wonder why. Think about why that is. Why are certain protests getting violently broken up and other protests are allowed to happen? Why are some people getting kicked out of the country for their protests while other people are being rewarded? Des?
Why do cops treat certain protesters differently than others? Like this protest, perfectly okay, but anything with this flag somehow is not. Why is that? Well, I recently did a deep dive into this topic, and you will not believe the disturbing ties that I uncovered.
In the forest behind me is Cop City, a sprawling police training facility built on 85 acres of land right here in Atlanta, designed to prepare law enforcement for increasingly intense urban challenges.
Oh my goodness.
Gina.
This is so dangerous.
Or in other words, the continued militarization of American policing. But what most people aren't talking about is the complex web of private donors, corporate interests, and one key foreign interest whose involvement raises serious questions.
The counterterrorism activities and Israel has dealt with this for such a long time.
For decades, pro-Israel groups have poured millions of dollars into training U.S. law enforcement officers in Israeli counterterrorism and crowd control methods, tactics that are now being used to manage protests and dissent on American streets. The crucial question we have to ask is, why is Israel, a foreign nation, investing millions of dollars to shape U.S. law enforcement strategies? What could they stand to gain from influencing how American police are trained and deployed? And today, we're going to find out. The relationship between U.S. law enforcement and Israeli military forces can be traced back to the early 1990s.
So he's going to go into it. I'm not going to play his whole video. There is, I was able to find all the way back to 2012 stories about how the NYPD has branches in Israel, and this relationship back and forth between militarized police and the Israeli government. And of course, they're painted as experts on this issue. For obvious reasons. This is part of their day-to-day existence, running what is effectively an open-air prison in Palestine, having checkpoints everywhere, and having militarized police who have very little accountability for their actions. This is part of what they do, and it's Cop City is this facility in Atlanta area that has been promoted for quite some time, and also at the same time there's been huge protests against it during the defund the police era. This was a huge point of contention, and there were lots of protests against this. And the reason is it's not an anti-police sentiment to be against the militarization of police. It's a recognition of a fundamental change. Policing in this country was a community-based activity for many, many years. Police would sort of walk the beat. They would know their neighborhood. They would know the people that they dealt with. And it led to much more peace and harmony in communities with policing. Not in all communities. Obviously, there were many, many problems. Certainly, if we go back far enough with racial issues. That said, the move away from community policing really happened during the drug war. The drug war kind of killed community policing. It put police against the community, because if your brother has a drug problem, you're not going to call the cops on him. And if the cops come to find him, you're not going to tell the cops the truth about your brother and his drug problem. If you're poor and your brother's a drug dealer, you're also not going to tell the police about your brother who's a drug dealer, because he's putting food on your table. So the result of this is it put police at odds with people. It put police at odds with the Fourth Amendment. The Fourth Amendment says you have a right to not be searched without due process of law, without reasonable suspicion of a crime. And there's no way really to enforce personal conduct laws to find every little gram of white powder in the country if you're not going to violate people's Fourth Amendment rights. So this is a major issue in America before any of this stuff that we're talking about with Israel and with militarization, because we were already putting communities at odds with police. Instead of the cop being the guy who helped find your stolen bike, and you could call if you were in trouble, you could call if you felt unsafe, the cop was now a threat to you and your family because your sister smokes weed and you don't want to get caught and thrown in jail for that, et cetera, et cetera. And it really got ramped up in the War on Terror time, during which a lot of military equipment was ending up back in our cities. The city Haverhill that I lived in ended up with this giant military, big, fat, tired, looks like you're gonna get shot out of a machine gun from it thing in a city of 70,000 people that doesn't have any military zones. So this is an issue before. It's clearly getting ramped up, and it's something we should all be really, really wary of. Any concentration of power, especially violent power, is something we should be wary of. But when we're talking about putting it out in our communities, it's a problem. I'm going to skip that for now because we're a little short on time, as always. I want to get back to the freedom of speech stuff that I think is closest to my heart, and some of the risk to it. We talked a lot about the Mahmoud Khalil case, and we're going to talk a little bit more about it. This is at Columbia. Des, if you'll give me this video, thank you.
search this premises.
This is pretty shocking to watch. This is video of federal agents inside Columbia University housing. These are agents from the Department of Homeland Security that are there in this apartment searching for a student, Ranjani Srinivasan.
For electronics documents related to Ranjani Srinivasan.
You could hear them saying that they're there looking for her. They were looking for documents. The State Department revoked her student visa, and as a result, the Department of Homeland Security started searching for her.
So we got more people's documents, more people's visas getting revoked because of political activism. Again, that's not what America's about. That's not our jam. One of the most recent ones that we covered a couple weeks ago on the show was, I'm going to butcher her name because Rumeysa Ozturk, I believe is her name. She was a tough student who was basically kidnapped off the street by ICE. Again, she was here illegally until Marco Rubio neocon shitbag revoked her visa. And the reason he did it was because of an op-ed that she wrote. I wanted to, I'm going to run out of time. Des, give me this op-ed real quick because I just want to talk about it for a moment. So this is the op-ed, and I wanted to take the time to read it because I wanted to find the anti-Semitism in it and the hateful terrorism in it. So I'm going to read the whole fucking thing because it's so important. These are the amount of justification I see when I talk about this online for people saying, oh, well, if you're going to come to this country, you better follow our rules. A visa is not a citizenship. It's not a right to anything. So let's look at the horrific crimes of this woman, her terrible, terrible, dangerous speech. On March the 4th, the Tufts Community Union Senate passed 3 out of 4 resolutions demanding that the university acknowledge the Palestinian genocide, apologize for University President Sunil Kumar's statements, disclose its investments, and divest from companies with direct or indirect ties to Israel. These resolutions are a product of meaningful debate by the Senate and represent a sincere effort to hold Israel accountable for clear violations of international law. Credible accusations against Israel include accounts of deliberate starvation and indiscriminate slaughter of Palestinian civilians and plausible genocide. Unfortunately, the university's response to the Senate has been wholly inadequate and dismissive of the Senate, the collective voice of the student body. Graduate Students for Palestine joins Tufts Students for Justice in Palestine, the Tufts Faculty and Staff Coalition for Ceasefire, and Fletcher Students for Palestine to reject the university's response. Although graduate students were not allowed by the university into the Senate meeting, which lasted for almost 8 hours, our presence on campus and financial entanglement with the university via tuition payments and the graduate work that we do on grants and research makes us direct stakeholders in the university's stance. Again, what are these people saying? They're saying we're members of the university community and we're invested. Our university is invested in the Israeli government and in companies with direct ties to the Israeli government. We don't want blood money. My words, not theirs. My words are clearly much more incendiary. While an argument made the university should not take political stances and should focus on research and intellectual exchange, the automatic rejection, dismissive nature, and condescending tone in the university statement, and she goes on and talks shit about, this is written by 4 people, they go on and talk about the university's failure to do anything. But I want to keep going through, as we go down, I'm looking for the part where it talks about, where it says something negative about Jewish people. Let's do a little control F on this. Jewish, 0. Jew, 0. Semite, 0. Okay, so nothing about Jewish people, nothing anti-Semitic. They're talking about their own school and its own funding of violence. They make the connection to South Africa and how important divesting, taking money out of South Africa was into ending that apartheid. It doesn't get back. The idea that this is violence, that this is anti-Semitism, is just fucking ludicrous. And it would only work in a population of people who are going to refuse to do what I did and take the time to read this. All the people calling Rumeysa Ozturk a terrorist or a terrorist sympathizer or Hamas or whatever load of shit you want to come up with to justify cheerleading your favorite politician, it's crap. And it's just on its face, it's not true. This is not the only example of things that are passed off as true in our society that are on their face not true. And until people start standing up and saying, hey, we need to be true and honest about things and not just live in a palace of lies, we're going to keep getting nonstop violence funded by our tax money. I'm going to skip that one in interest of time. All right. While we're on the immigration issue, Trump had promised to deport was it 20 million people in his first, I don't know, whatever time it was. One of the big promises was mass deportation. And we haven't got that, actually. We haven't got that at all. Instead, we've had this very targeted deportation. And all done without due process. The immigration issue is a very complex one. And I think it is a fair and justifiable position to say that people who are in this country illegally should be deported. I think it's not one that I currently hold, but I think it's a justifiable position. But due process, again, it's what separates America. It's what separates free countries from dictatorships. And if we're just going to kick people out because we feel like it, then we're no better than anywhere else. And in fact, those people are probably better off back in their own countries, quite frankly, at this point in time. But let's go. Let's take a look at this latest story, Des. So I'm sure we all heard about the El Salvadoran deportees. So all these supposed gang members from El Salvador were deported in one fell. Well, actually, sorry, not from El Salvador. Were deported to El Salvador, and one of them, it turns out, was entirely administrative error, to which the Trump administration said they were beyond. Des, give me back. Said they were basically beyond their power to do anything about. Like, oh, it's too late. Yeah, we fucked up. Our bad. And again, like if you are in support of deporting a lot of people, again, I think there's a justification for that. There's no justification for denying people a hearing. There's no justification for denying people due process of the law. It's what makes our country great. It's what our country was founded on. It's why freedom. It's all about freedom. It's not about having a government that can't just do what it feels like when it feels like it. And the idea that I see people all day long, or bots maybe, arguing against due process of the law is insanity to me. We need to do better than this. Again, deport who you want, but maybe do a hearing to make sure it's the real person. Maybe do a hearing to make sure you didn't just screw up administratively. Maybe do a hearing to make sure you're not putting someone in harm's way. Maybe do a hearing to make sure you're not just shitting on someone's freedom of speech. All right, I think so we'll turn a little bit of 1 degree over to the right. I want to get away from Gaza because that is an entirely depressing situation. Unfortunately, it is not the only military conflict we have on our doorstep. If you're not familiar with Kim Iverson, she's one of my favorite independent media members. So she's going to give a quick rundown on good old Lindsey Graham. Lindsey Graham, by the way, again, Trumpers. Trump was rightfully critical of Lindsey Graham for being a neocon shitbag for many, many years. And now all of a sudden, oh, greatest guy. He's a great guy, Lindsey Graham, great guy. Des, give me my screen.
Lindsey Graham pretty much gave us the blueprint of exactly how the United States is going to declare war on Iran. What he said was that Israel is going to basically go to war over the uranium enrichment that Iran is going to pursue. And after Israel goes to war, we're going to go and back up Israel. So this is some of what he has to say. It's a fairly long interview that he gave, and we're going to break this up into little pieces because he actually said quite a lot. So let's go ahead and get started.
Trump's not the problem, the Ayatollah is. This drone was in international waters.
International waters. So the drone was shot down in the Strait of Hormuz, which is, by the way, nowhere near the United States. So they're kind of making it sound like, if you watch the news and if you're reading the news, they make it sound like, Iran has acted very hostile towards the United States. They shot down one of our drones, acting like this drone was off the coast of California or off the coast of Florida. The United States has admitted to using this drone to spy on Iran. And Iran knows this, and so they shoot it down, knowing that it has nobody on board. And they said, we're sending you a message. Don't spy on us. We're shooting down your spy drone. And now we're apparently this is justifying us potentially going to war with Iran because we shot down a drone in the Strait of Hormuz, which is right next to Iran. I also want you to take a look at this map here, which shows all of the American bases that are surrounding Iran. Now, Iran...
So we'll skip over some of the details. I don't need to know the details. I honestly don't, and I don't want to sound ignorant, but every war of my lifetime has been based on lies, and has been a lie all the way throughout. We were supposed to be out of George W. Bush's Iraq War was supposed to be over in 6 weeks. We were supposed to be making way for democracy in the Middle East. That's a load of horseshit. And this other one will be a load of horseshit too, because there's no accountability for anyone who screws up. There was no accountability for anybody in the Bush administration who cost us $8 trillion, at least 500,000 Iraqi lives, 40,000 U.S. service members. And there was no accountability for it. So why not start another war? They all have stocks in all the military contractors, and that's exactly what's going on. All right, I'm going to have to pause on a couple other things. Let me, another big story from this week I want to get to real quick because I want to be an equal opportunity criticizer. Cory Booker did a whole big grandstanding, set the record for the longest filibuster in the Senate, blah, 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 blah. Very, very impressive if you don't know anything about who Cory Booker is, about his incredible connections to Wall Street, and his also huge amounts of money he takes from Israel to support all their wars. And there's a great little video calling it out.
The relationship with American politicians. I'm a constituent of Cory Booker. Remember that he's accepted over $800,000 from AIPAC. And us as constituents, we have called, we've left messages. Many of us have actually been to his office. We've protested outside his office, and not one mention about Palestinians being killed in Gaza. All he talks about is October 7th, praising Israel. And if y'all didn't notice, he was wearing that yellow little bow pin. That is a propaganda piece for Israel.
Again, all you have to do is just go doing a little digging into good old Cory Booker to know what he really cares about. And it's none of the things that he's filibustering for. It's a great example of how most of politics is theater. So want to talk real quickly about, I was hoping we're going to have a little more time for this, but I suck at time management. We'll talk a little about the economy stuff. The tariff talk, like all other conversations in this country, certainly through the mainstream media, has gotten very binary and very stupid. The idea that like tariffs are good or tariffs are bad is a silly idea. Tariffs are as good as you make them. So we have to raise funds for our government somehow, theoretically. And tariffs are one way of doing it. It was the dominant way of doing it for the first 150 years of the United States' existence. And I think given the imbalances in trade and imbalances in environmental policy and labor policy, there's a great justification for tariffs theoretically. So most of the environmental movement of the last 30 years has been about exporting pollution to other countries. So the reason that solar panels are that much cheaper in China than they are cheaper to make in China than they are to make here is not just because the Chinese people make less money. It's because there's far fewer environmental regulations. And what we're effectively doing is incentivizing them to make things because of our regulations. I'm not saying that we should have less regulations, but I think you could say, "Hey, China, you're dumping all this shit in the rivers. We want to put a tariff on you based on that." When it comes to labor, a lot of these countries have far, far, far cheaper labor, and it's very difficult for our labor to compete. Good justification for a tariff in that situation. We have massive trade imbalances with some countries. You can come up with justification for a tariff there. So it's not about and seeing the blue MAGA come out sort of, tariffs are the worst thing, and in defense of Wall Street. Like, get the fuck out of here. You're not Wall Street. Wall Street is not you. 99% of us, the only tie that most of us have to Wall Street is our pension funds that we have very little control over anyway, our 401ks and whatever. Let's not pretend that Wall Street is Main Street. So I quite frankly don't care what happens to them. But the way in which Trump is doing this, it's like, it doesn't matter what he's doing. Anything done in this fashion is going to be a failure. This like tough guy flexing, I'm going to use this as a negotiation tool, no predictability. I'm going to say one thing one day, pull it back, change it a different day. It's absolutely ridiculous. And it is the opportunity for abuse here and fraud is through the roof. And let me give you a quick example. So the whole drama this week, right, is Trump announces tariffs to everywhere. immediately, by the way. Not, in 2027 we're going to do this. Not, we're going to ramp up. It's going to be 1% this year, 2% next year, whatever. Just like, boom, hammer, tariffs. And then, was it 2 days later, comes back and goes, well, actually, just China, and pulls back all these tariffs after Elon Musk and a few other very wealthy people had complained to him. So maybe he was just, he's a silly guy and he can't make up his mind. I find that a little fucking hard to believe, to be honest. And Des, if you give me my screen. So this is the market over, what is it, 30 days? Yeah. Look at this dive over here. Dive, recovery. Look at gold prices and silver prices. Dive, recovery. Dive, recovery. This is all around one man's words. If you knew that he was going to pull this shit, you could have made an awful lot of money. And I have a feeling that some people knew that he was going to pull this shit. It all seems a little too convenient and scripted to me. I could be wrong. Maybe I'm just a weird paranoid conspiracy theorist. But I don't think he has any intention of fighting for you and your economy. I think it's all about, quite frankly, destroying the economy for the bankers' sake. There's so much other stuff I want to get into, but we are out of time. Here's what I am going to do for you lovely human beings. We'll get caught up on some of the stuff. I will post a video during the week, a couple videos during the week, and talk about the last few things I want to talk about. There's some really big economic stuff I want to get to, because I know all of you have jobs and lives and money at stake, and you want to be able to provide for yourself and your family in the future. And I think there's going to be some real impediments to doing so, that if we get ahead of the game, we could maybe stop from happening. All that said, we will be back next week for the same deal. If you were here at 6 o'clock and you were here for the Doing Better News, our local news show, that was awesome with Beth, talk about some local stuff. This is our Sunday Sanity Check with me, where I get to rant about all the things. And unfortunately, we didn't have one last week, so I have more than a week's worth of stuff to rant about. Again, please let me know in the comments your takes on my rants. Correct me, educate me, make me better. We'll be back next week, same exact schedule, and we'll be back in about 15 minutes with the Doing Better show with Kyle James, our music guest, who I'm really, really excited for. So tune back in about 15 minutes, and thank you very much for being with us this week. See you later.